Welcome back to the As Told by You podcast. We are very excited to welcome Dawndy Mercer-Plank to the couch today. Dawndy, please kind of give us a rundown of what you've been up to. What are you doing now?
So everybody thinks that when I used the word retired from television news, that I was sitting home eating chocolate bonbons, playing with horses and dogs and cats, and working in my garden. That happens occasionally. I am so busy. I'm like, I did not retire. So I spent 35 years in television news as a journalist and loved it. When I chose to walk away from it, I said, I'm old enough to have had a fantastic career, but I'm young enough, still feel young enough, that I have more years ahead of me. I wasn't sure when I left television news what it would look like. I had an idea of some things I was going to dabble in, some offers. I'm still in front of the camera through different companies, one being Lexington Medical Center. Mm-hmm. So we are doing some medical reports for them that try to build up their YouTube channel, just health and medical, which is, right up my alley. Then I've been doing commercials, and I've done a part in one film called Sammy Quits Football. Great production crew, a very talented group of young people. And they're looking for a buyer for that, but they're going to send it to film festivals and such. And I'll give you one guess what my role was in the movie.
Newscaster.
Yes.
Really?
So, yes.
Okay.
So when my agent, who's in Atlanta, contacted me and said, hey, we're going to submit you for this role. So I auditioned and got a call back. Auditioned again, got a call back, auditioned the third time, to which my husband said, if you don't get it, you're going to really feel bad. He's like, I can't get the role of a newscaster, but I did get it, so thankfully. So we shot that. And then I'm up for another film. This one will be shot in North Carolina, and it is playing the role of a woman in her young 60s. Now, I'm in my late 50s, but they'll do some makeup and stuff, and so I auditioned for it, and I've had 3 callbacks, but now they have changed the storyline slightly. So they contacted me, and they said, we're really interested in you, but we don't want you to articulate and enunciate so much. We need you, in addition, to have more of a Southern accent.
Oh. So the real acting is now going to have to come out,
yes, right? Yes. And so immediately they're like, do you think you could do that? And I was like, well, y'all.
Where are you from originally?
I'm originally from Indianapolis, Indiana.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
And so I grew up in the Midwest.
But you've been here a long time.
Well, I've been here a while, yes. So I grew up in Indianapolis and then finished school in Washington, D.C., and then graduated. And then went to Green Bay, Wisconsin, your home state. But where are you from in Wisconsin?
Lake Geneva.
That's right.
Lake Geneva area, yeah.
That's right. So I spent 3 years as a reporter in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And then I targeted Columbia, South Carolina, really not knowing much about Columbia other than it's a capital of the state. It's hot, but we had vacationed in Hilton Head a couple times. So I said, and my sister was being placed at University of South Carolina. She's with a Christian ministry, then called Campus Crusade for Christ, now called CRU, C-R-U. And so she was going to be there, and she and I are very close. So I said, let me see about this WIS-TV. Got the job, and then started off on their morning show. And that's when the morning news did not start till 6:30 in the morning. Now It starts at 4:30.
Oh, goodness.
So then I was promoted to the 5 o'clock anchor. And then I went to Houston, Texas after being here for 4 years. I lived in Houston, Texas, and worked in that market for 5 years. And then, Houston was great in a lot of ways, and I loved Texas. But my heart was here. And so I talked to the news director and worked out something where they were losing their 7 o'clock anchor. And he said, would you come and anchor the 7 o'clock news? And I said, yeah, I'll give you 1 year. Well, of course, that turned into how many more? So I spent a total of 27 years in television news here at WIS. And then the other years, a total of 35 years between my Green Bay and Houston TV career.
Wow.
And then retired September 30th of 2023.
Oh, wow.
Can you believe it's been a year and 4 months or so at this point?
Yeah.
At this recording.
What was you had mentioned earlier, like it was your choice to take this other path. Like,
Yeah.
what was that thought process like for you? What
It was a
finally
tough
got
one.
you to say, it's time. I need something new.
I waffled on that decision so much. I was convinced I wanted to leave because news has changed so much.
Mm-hmm.
I, though, really saw myself staying in television news till my mid to late 60s because, one, I'm a very active person with a lot of energy, so I can't just, like my husband says, just go to the spa. And I'm like, well, baby, I'm not a spa girl. I want to go shovel horse manure out of the barn.
Yeah.
That's just more me, or get my hands, in the garden and have dirty nails. But I really loved what I did. I loved my viewers.
Yeah.
I loved creativity. I loved interviewing people. So the reason I left was that news has changed dramatically. We used to have, and gone are the days where you had just a couple of shows in the evening. So the whole team was working on just a show or two. Now we have shows that begin, the morning show went from 6:30 a.m. to 7 a.m. to now 4:30 a.m. to 8 a.m.
Yeah.
And then the noon show went from a half hour to a full hour. And now we have news, another block in there during the day before leading into the noon. And then we have, 2 o'clock is from somewhere else. And then 3 o'clock show for an hour, 4 o'clock show for an hour, 5 o'clock show for an hour, 6 o'clock, half hour, 7
That's a
o'clock
lot of
now
news.
goes till
Yeah.
8. Yes. And so and then of course your evening shows, 10 and 11. And so you don't necessarily have the extra staff.
Mm-hmm.
So as quantity went up, quality came down. And this is not
No,
WIS
of course.
only.
Yeah, it's hard to
This
keep
is
up with
across
that
the
much.
board.
Yeah.
This is on network too.
Mm-hmm.
They're just everywhere is struggling. Every market. I've got friends who work all over the nation in television news, and we all say the same thing. So for me, I was finding that I was spending so much time training and teaching young producers, some of whom were still in school. Many of them very bright, loved these young people. But I'd spend all this time teaching and training, and then they'd be, 6 months into it, a year later, I want to do something else.
Right.
And so I'd think, oh, all that effort, gone. And I got tired.
Yeah.
And I was anchoring so many shows. When you get into the business, all you want to do is be an anchor. And then when you get to be an anchor, you're like, oh, but I want more shows. Well, then you get all the shows and you're exhausted. And I burned out. And so it was a very happy parting, but it was a very tough decision because I really loved my coworkers at WIS. And WIS is just such a solid TV station in so many ways.
Yeah.
And so but it was a good time to step away because I wanted to leave while I still loved it and be able to say, I leave on a happy note and I'm going to still do some other things. And so basically I do a lot of, commercials, now a couple films, minor roles.
But you can tell when you talk about the acting stuff,
Yes.
you kind of light up.
Yes.
So-
because the camera's still coming on and
Yeah.
you're still in front of people. You're still having to be creative. You're still having to think on your feet.
Was acting something you wanted to do?
Not necessarily. I just think
Or is it
that,
something that's just kind of evolved and you're like, oh,
yeah,
I like this.
it's more evolved. I mean, if you say, well, if you were to do anything but be what you've been, what would it be? And yes, I think it'd be great. I think it'd be fun to be in a, big movie. Especially when you're used to being in front of the camera, and the other thing I do a ton of public speaking. I'm constantly speaking somewhere. I was speaking all day Saturday at an event. I've got a big event Monday night, with 550 women, and I do mostly women groups. But I was emceeing the event, Bill, when I don't remember what event it was.
It's the AFP.
Yes.
Yeah, the
And that's
awards.
when, of course, I knew you from years ago.
Yeah.
But yes, and that's when I got to meet you.
Yeah.
So I love people so much that I'm so grateful to still have a platform where I can MC and be a public speaker and do these things so that I can be involved in the community and be around people.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What's it like to be a local celebrity?
I love going to Walmart.
27 years on art television every single day.
Yes.
Everybody in Columbia knows who you are.
Yes. So I love going to Walmart because I guess people just feel, maybe it's because I have my hair in a ponytail or, in a baseball cap, and they feel you're more approachable at that moment. I love it because I have such a love for people that I want them to feel an open invitation to come up to me and say, hey, Dawndy, and just start talking. But what's funny is a lot of times they forget I'm meeting them for the first time. They've had a relationship with me for a couple decades, well, almost 3 decades. So they already know everything about me, kind of thing. Right. And I'm looking at them like, and what was your name again? But the funniest thing to me is sometimes I have to say, there's not a TV screen between us, because sometimes they'll start talking and they'll be like, Brian, look, that's Bill. That's Bill.
Look, right there.
You're like right there.
Yeah, she's right there.
Yes. And I'm like, and I can hear you.
Yeah.
So, but I like it because I feel like it gives people, they feel they have an open invitation. And I'd much rather them just come up and say, hey, are you Dawndy Mercer-Plank? Because it's when you can hear them, I think that's the lady from TV. Hey, lady,
and don't remember your name exactly, so
right,
they don't want
you're the lady from TV.
They don't want to be embarrassed about that.
Yes, yeah.
Well, and for all the years that I did weddings, this is a really funny kind of allegory to that. Like, I would see people from the wedding in the grocery store, like a groomsman or like a brother of the bride or something like that, and I knew them because they spoke in the wedding video.
Sure.
They don't know me from Adam because they never had any interaction with me at all, right? They're up at the front of the thing speaking, but they're in this video that I'm showing people all the time.
Right.
And I have to resist going up and saying something to them because a lot of times I don't remember their names. Same scenario as that, but and I think local celebrity is so interesting. We just did this breakfast this morning, and Todd Ellis and Tommy Suggs were presenting. And of course, these guys are just like heroes here locally.
Absolutely.
But if you go to Ohio or you go to Oregon, they're not necessarily going to know who Todd Ellis is. I mean, you could explain it and they go, "Oh yeah, that's interesting," but not the same way that it happens here.
That's
and I think that's so. I think I love that sort of locality so much. That we can sort of appreciate that.
And that's one thing I think, like working in the Houston market was very different than working here.
Right.
And that was one draw to come back to this area. And I think a lot of us think, hey, should we have, gone to network instead? And network is great. But the reality is, I think like my friend Craig Melvin, I think there's a definite, he misses some things about this area.
Oh yeah.
Even though he's at the top of his game.
Yeah.
But you got to go for that ring, right? You got to go for it, right?
Yeah. Right. So yes, there's just such a great community anyway, and to have been the face of it for so long, and just to be able to love on people and still be a part of it is a huge blessing.
Well, and I talk to so many people who have great talent here, obviously. I mean, do great things, but they've gone out there to do those things and they've come back, right? They've gone and done those things, and I can't imagine that anybody that goes to network somewhere won't just return here at some point, because that's what that's what happens with a community like Columbia.
Yes.
And that was going to be one of my questions: why Columbia? And I think it's so important. Is why we do business here. I feel like we could compete other places, maybe. I don't know, but never tried. But I'm assuming we could.
Right.
And we just love working in Columbia because it's such a close-knit community. When I'm in that room with those 150 business leaders, I know 40% of them.
Isn't it nice?
Because I've already worked with them.
When you've built up your network and you're ingrained in the community, it makes your day all the richer.
Yeah. Sure. It definitely is. So where do you see this going? Do you feel like acting is like a thing that's bit you that you're going to try to do more often?
Good question, and have me back in a year and I'll let you know. I don't know. I had done a commercial up in North Carolina for Caramont Health, and there I had a small role. And I think what was a little tough for me is I enjoy it. I really do. But I really enjoy using my brain. And I think that was the thing with, and not that you don't with acting.
Yeah,
you
well,
do,
I mean,
totally.
Sure. Yeah.
It's just that for me, I enjoy more emceeing, public speaking, discussions. That's one reason I loved interviewing so much. But, yes, if my agent calls and says, how about going for this one role? Absolutely. I think it would be fun to do it. What's very different from me in doing commercials and a couple films is how many takes they do.
Sure.
In television news, it's live and it's one and done.
Yeah.
And then you're on to the next show.
One take Dawndy is here.
Yes, you have to be. Yes.
Let's get it done. Get it in the cake.
Get it done.
That's true.
Get
and
it
that
done
might make
right.
you a better actor too.
True.
That
True.
you're used to just nailing
except
it.
that they want me to have a Southern accent.
Right.
Y'all.
Well, you look, you will have studied it as much as anybody.
Yes,
right?
I have.
'Cause
Yes,
you've lived here.
I actually went to YouTube and started looking up how to sound like you're from the South, and it goes against everything
That
I've ever
standard
trained
American
my voice.
dialect
Yes,
is,
yes.
Yeah, the Indiana
Helpful.
is like right there in the middle,
Right,
right? So there's
right.
not much.
Well, you get the Southern Indiana, and then it
You
starts
do.
to
You
come
get
out.
a little bit of it, and and the nasality. And so when I was working in the Green Bay market, I had a little bit of that Indiana nasality, the twang, and so I took voice lessons to really learn. And I had a soft, I worked for the radio station on campus, and I have a recording of it, and this is Dawndy Mercer for WBST Radio.
Right.
Very high, soft voice, and I really had to train to bring it down and make it stronger. So I took voice lessons. Well, I thought when my news director had hooked me up with this voice teacher that she and I were going to work on just speaking. Instead, she was teaching me to sing opera.
Yeah.
And so I sang Puccini's O mio babbino caro, just because she was trying to really work on the breath.
Yeah.
And yes, that opera was not my career. That was short-lived.
It's tough. You got to love it.
Yes,
it's
but
one of those
it
things
was
you gotta
good for the
love.
voice. Yes.
Yeah, that's amazing. And we do a lot of work with Hannah Horn.
Yes, yeah.
And now she hosts a show for Inside Carolina,
Which
for the
is
university.
a great production.
Yeah, we have a lot
Yes.
of fun doing it, and she's been great. But she's also a very accomplished singer, and
Beautiful voice.
We had a opera singer on the show last spring. And she got up on stage and sang the USC alma mater with her and harmonized and everything on the spot, improvised it, as we were sitting
talented.
there.
Yeah.
I was like, man, so that must be a TV news anchor thing,
Maybe.
that the singing.
Yeah.
So talk about, Brian and I had an interesting discussion on this podcast about sort of the change in media and the idea that, when I was a kid, at least in the 80s and 90s, there were three anchors. You had Tom Brokaw and Peter Jennings and the other guy.
Dan Rather.
That's right. And you knew that they were all telling you things that their entire team had vetted out. We've had, journalistic integrity all over the place.
Yeah.
And right now we seem to be in a market where when people say things, they just say things, and
Right. They opine.
it's up to me to decide whether that's a real
Right.
thing or not. Talk about that change in news a little bit, and what's your take on kind of the TikTokification of media? Because when the fires started, you got in LA, you got on the ground. I am standing here in front of a fire. This is insane. And like there are no police here. You see this, like there's no fire trucks, no police. I'm just standing in front of my burning house and I don't know what to do.
Right.
And that's a whole other level of news than what we've ever seen before.
The biggest thing, objectivity, was so ingrained in us in journalism school.
Right.
Now subjectivity, it's and people opine and pontificate and say things that you're like, well, that's your opinion.
Right.
I think the other thing, and this is one thing where I dealt with burnout in the industry, I just want the facts.
Right.
I just want to know what happened. I don't want a report where fingers are being pointed, or you're interviewing a person whom you know will point fingers at some administration or the lack of. And I just want to know what happened.
Right.
And I think that we've gotten so away from that. And part of that is because of the quantity of shows going up. It's not just, okay, your evening news. It's your evening news, but then we're going to have all these other shows, you know, like on network that follow after, and those have to be opinionated. And it's on all networks, you know, Fox, CNN, MSNBC. It's on all of them, you know. And News Nation, I had hope for News Nation when they, you know, came into the mix. And even with that, and I think they do, you know, they try to, you know, tout. I mean, just like Fox did originally with, you know, fair and balanced reporting. And I think everybody goes into it with that. But then you kind of say, oh, but here's my market and I can attract these people if I, you know, use this or have this personality. So I think that, I will say, I think local news is doing a little better job than network is at trying to be more, here are the facts as we know it.
I think they kind of have to be too.
They have to be. I think what's hard for them, though, is just the lack of resources. Because, again, there are so many shows, but there's not necessarily the staff. So and these young reporters come in and they're like, oh, hey, John Doe will talk to me. And the person just isn't wise enough yet in the business to know, well, John Doe has a personal agenda.
Right.
You know, if you're going to interview John Doe, you've got to get Jane Doe's, you know,
you have to
balance it out.
Yeah.
So, yes, I really think that people have got to get the information from multiple TV channels and read everything they can, educate themselves. But, you know, sadly, the way it's handed to you is, hey, I saw this on Instagram. Did you know this happened?
Right. And that's the way it comes to you, is to say, did you know this happened?
Right.
Not I saw this from some Yahoo on Instagram who I don't have any idea whether they know what they're talking about.
Right.
And
so, yeah, we still have to go back to that. We use the term legacy media a lot, right? So we still have to go back to a trusted source that will go out and vet all of the different angles to give you what actually happened. And we're still going to get that through our phone.
Right.
Yes,
right.
That's right.
So
snippets.
Snippets.
Yeah, right.
Right. So the issue then becomes, we don't turn the television on. Like, I have YouTube TV set up for my house to watch TV. But we literally watch sports and Fox News in the background.
Yep.
But we are not watching WIS anymore. We don't turn the Today Show on in the morning anymore. Like, all of it over the last 10 years.
Because you don't have a need for it? Is that, or because you don't trust it?
A little bit of both.
Both, yeah.
Yeah, it's like you have only so much time in your day.
Right.
And you can feel the bias coming off of the anchors on the Today Show.
Right.
Even when they're delivering news.
yeah.
So it's like, I don't need that.
Right.
I just need the facts, but we don't generally watch TV much anymore. So the lack of watching the TV diminishes the amount of stuff that we're going to consume. I got 10 minutes while I'm waiting in the car. I can get all my news. Now, the thing we need to encourage is having you follow trusted news sources. But what makes them trusted? Because they all have an angle, because they all want clicks.
Yes.
And
see, I think you're exactly right.
That we're in.
And that's why, you know, when I retired, I had to say, I'm not going to watch for a while. And I just only really recently kind of went back to watching, but not at all like I used to. And so I'm doing much more trying to find it, you know, what's happening in the world here, reading multiple things. But it really is it's hard, and when you think that network is where you should be able to get the best information, and I just look at the typos alone, and I'm thinking, okay, if you couldn't check to make sure you don't have a typo, a grammatical error, and people think I get too hung up on, well, it needs to be, but I'm like, yes, it needs to be accurate, because I need to be able to say, you put in that extra set of, you gave that extra few seconds for that extra set of eyes to look at that to make sure it was accurate. I need to know that that's what you want so that I can trust you. So, and what's amazing is I think we always need to know some of the big things that are going on in the world. But the reality is the world is still going to spin. And just because, like, if you talk about the political scene, if you don't like a decision, a person in power, be it on the municipal level to the national level, international level, the reality is we're still going to wake up tomorrow morning, and you may not like it this time, but the next day's decision, you might. And so I really kind of had to put a filter. There are times like on Twitter or X, I have to say, I can't look at it anymore because the vitriol gets so off the charts. And I'm like, I just, between now and dead, I don't want to keep filling my mind with negativity. Yeah.
Well, and people have started to follow politics like sports. In other words, my team is winning, my team is losing.
You're right.
And I swear to you, and I maybe didn't pay enough attention, but that just never happened until a few years ago.
No, you're right, Bill. You're right.
It started with Trump and the swag.
Yeah.
No one had. Andrew Schultz talks about the merch.
Right.
The merch,
right.
Yeah, like
right.
No one had merch.
There was never an Obama shirt that you would wear or whatever.
It started. They had the big O in the face.
That's right. Yeah, that's
a little bit,
true.
but
never the red hat that's become
iconic,
ubiquitous.
Or the watch. You can get the Trump watch or the Trump tennis shoes. Yeah, the shoes. Yeah.
Well, and frankly, the thing is, most people, and even people who are partisan, are probably not as polarized as it comes across, if they can take themselves out of that echo chamber where everybody's talking about their team and whether they're winning or losing.
Right.
And I think there are good and bad things that happen in all scenarios, and it's kind of like you have to, like you said, it's probably not super effective on your life. That you hear about these things. I think it's important to know about stuff, and I think you're right about that. And I think it's important to know about stuff, obviously, that affects you directly. But man, all of the, who's going to be the thing that does this thing, it's so it gets so detailed, and people follow it so closely that I think it loses a lot of its power.
Yes. And I have kind of, over the years come to realize, as much as I loved being in the know, I don't want to say I support being ignorant, but there is some truth to ignorance sometimes is bliss. And I have found that there are other things I want to fill my mind with. Right. I'm so determined to become fluent in French. And I'd say I'm fluent to an intermediate level.
Right.
But, for me to really master that language, and as you guys know, I go every 6 months there to language school for a couple weeks. And that's a lot of studying. And so I can sit and be mad at the TV or point out all the grammatical errors or the biasness, or I can sit and do my French homework,
Sure.
And just kind of say, at this season of my life, I want to enjoy that now, and just enjoy friends and entertaining and having people over. I love to cook. And it was funny when you had Christian on about all his restaurants. I used to think, I would love to have Dawndy's. Like, I don't like the sound of Dawndy's Diner because I would want it to be more upscale.
Oh, yeah.
I would love to have a restaurant because I love cooking. I love entertaining. And my husband's like, baby, you just want it because you just want to go around every table and
talk to everybody.
And talk to everyone. And he said, but the reality is when the dishwasher guy, doesn't show up,
you got to be the person.
You're going to be, in there, and you're not going to be able to greet your guests. And then I laughed when Christian was like, I like cleaning the dishes.
Yeah, that's right.
But when I heard this schedule, I thought I worked all the time in television news.
Oh, no.
That restaurant business, I was like, Good luck, Christian. It's all yours.
It's a dark business.
Yes.
I will tell you, when you say Dawndy's Diner, I've got a perfect vision of what it is.
Do you?
I mean,
what
I know what the menu looks like. I know what they're wearing. I know the vibe. When you say Dawndy's Diner, I know exactly what we're in for. Right?
Yes.
And
well, now when you say what the menu looks like, I'm plant-based, and so
okay.
Yes. So now I cook meat products for my family because there's only, of the 3 children, only one is plant-based, but my husband and the other 2 kids will eat, all eat chicken and sometimes beef, but yes, so the diner would be kind of slim pickings. So you guys may know Suzanne Pucci. She used to own Stanley Steamer, and now she's got Scoop of Heaven ice cream. So I'll announce it now because we're going, after I leave here, I go to WIS because I'm going to be on one of the shows to talk about the relaunching of the Lexington Medical Center Heart and Soul Women's 5-miler. This is a 5-mile run, a 5-mile walk, and a 3-mile walk, of which your wife...
Yep. This is actually where I met you for the first time.
Yes, that's exactly right. So Elaine was part of that launch and did so well for us for so many years. But so we're bringing it back. And we used to always have chocolate-covered strawberries and then a rose for the women as they'd come across the finish line. And I'll tell you more in a minute about why we started this. But so Suzanne, we wanted to bring her into the mix because she's into working out and fitness, and she's got the ice cream store now. So we're like, hey, can you come up with a special ice cream for us that is a healthier option? Because let's face it, ice cream's not going to be on the health food list.
Not good, yeah.
So she came up with this one, to which Gina Moffat, the race director, my best friend, says, only Dawndy Mercer-Plank would like that. Vegan kale.
Oh, good gracious.
Can you imagine if we go to the women, here's your ice cream, it's vegan kale flavor.
Does not sound like something I would eat.
I was like, yes,
non-dairy.
I love it. So Gina's like, Suzanne, go back to the kitchen, come up with another flavor, maybe something with strawberries that's on the healthier side.
Right.
And so she's working on that currently. But this race, for anybody, who's watching your podcast, and of course I'll put this on all my platforms too, but it's a race that the reason we started this race back in 2002, she and I have run all these, marathons together, half marathons, 5Ks, 10Ks. And we love every race. Of course, in the middle of a marathon, I'm always like, I hate this. I'm never doing this again. I don't know why I do this.
That's what it's for.
And then I get across the finish line and I'm like, sign me up for the next one. Sign me up for the next one. Love. And I think a marathon is so symbolic of life. You have good miles, you have bad miles, you have miles that you think I can't take another step.
Right.
And then you have miles that you're on that runner's high and you're like, this is the greatest thing ever. And so we knew, though, the camaraderie we had with other women and just encouraging women to be healthy and to go out there and run. So we're like, we want to create that for women in our community. So it's a women-only race. We ask the guys to stand on the sidelines and cheer on their ladies, but we say only girls and moms, aunts, sisters. And so we have around 1,200, 1,400 women who participate in this. Awesome. Well, when COVID hit, it was going to be our 18th year, and we had to shut it down. And so then the next year, same thing. We're not having the races yet. And then Gina and I were kind of like, we had a great 18 years. We're kind of tired. Let's go ahead and we'll cancel it. We'll retire it forever. It was a great run for 18 years. And then a little more time passed, and everybody's kind of like, you really need to bring that back. People loved it. The community needs it. And so we're announcing today that Heart and Soul is back.
That's
and
awesome.
so,
cool.
And I used to always start every race or every promo, hey, girlfriends. So once again, today I'll be saying, hey, girlfriends. And I know Elaine just had a 4th baby, but.
Yeah, we'll probably be back volunteering next year.
Yeah. When is it going to be?
May 17th.
Okay.
Oh, my birthday.
Yeah. And it's May 17th. Well, I'll remember that. So we're moving it because we used to always hold it at Finley Park.
Right. That's a little occupied.
a little occupied.
Difficult with all the fences, yeah.
Yes. And when we realized, and I was ready to retire from there anyway, when every time I'd go by the fountain, I'm like, there's no water. So although, have you ever noticed some of the commercials? Like there's a law firm that uses a shot of Findlay Park and it's when the fountain was running.
Yep.
And I'm like, that hadn't been running for like 10 years.
Don't get me started.
They need to hire you to reshoot that.
I'm telling you.
But we are moving it to Gills Creek Memorial Park.
Oh, cool.
In the heart of Forest Acres.
Nice.
Yeah.
Perfect location. It's going to be a great run. And we're really excited to bring that back.
Well, my wife is also an avid runner, so I'll tell her about that.
Yes.
Yeah, she's
I'm so
training for a
glad.
half right now. She
Good
says
for her.
She says she can't do a marathon. She's just decided. She's like, I don't have time. I'm not going to do it. And I was
It
like,
is a commitment.
Yeah.
Halves are much more doable.
But she feels like 13
and
is
amazing.
is
And
easy.
a half marathon is pushing yourself definitely. So she'll get a lot out
She'll
of
get
that.
there.
Good
She
luck
does a
to
half.
her.
She's going to do a full.
get
It's
the
just
bug.
like
I've actually
Yeah.
contemplated that this year I was gonna.
Really?
We ran. What was the last run? The Turkey Trot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great little event. Started at Colonial Life. The boys. We love 5Ks because our boys can do them.
Yes.
And they do them well. And,
Yes.
And I ran with my second son, and he is really fast. But for whatever reason, that day was not the day.
Yeah.
He wanted to walk.
Oh.
It was hard.
Yes.
And I was like, I have never run a race for myself.
Right. It's always been with the family or for a lane
sure.
or whatever.
I've run half marathons. I've run all kinds of races, but I've never run it for myself to see how fast I could actually do it.
Good. Yeah.
And I was thinking, I was like, maybe this is the year. This is the
That'd
year
be
I'm
awesome.
going to run races for myself. And I tried planning out like, okay, and build up to a full marathon. And
Right.
forever, I've always said, I'm not running a marathon. What is the point? There is absolutely no point to doing it.
26
I'm not gonna
miles
do it.
is too far. Yeah.
But I've run half marathons. I'm like, I could do that again. And it's not like I'm training for these. I'm just getting off the couch and doing it.
Right.
So what happens if I train? If I were to actually like build up, could I do it? Could I do it under 4 hours? Like that sort of thing.
And Dawndy Bryan's diet is the opposite of yours. His is plant free. So
That's right.
his is no
Just
plants,
meats and no potatoes even,
meats and
yeah.
potatoes and bread and cheese
Yes,
and
yes.
those things. And so it works for him. I don't understand it, but
Yeah.
I do squeeze some vegetables in there.
On occasion.
For my 100-day challenge, I made it.
There you go.
Greens every day.
Good.
Yeah, oh my
Yes.
goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, do it, Ryan. I think that, just pick a half and start training for it. Make it and it does make a difference if you have a running partner. That's one thing I've loved about running with Gina is, and I think that's why we became best friends, because when you're running out there for 4 hours together, you're sharing your life, every Saturday morning. And running's not for everyone. Distance running isn't by any means. But again, just heart and soul. That's one thing I love, is because we want to encourage women. You don't have to be these distance runners or elite runners.
Or fast. Yeah.
You can be like, hey, I just want to go out there with other women and have a nice walk on a pretty morning.
Yeah.
And we want to just help them to feel like we're wrapping our arms around them and saying, we want this for you. We want you to enjoy this day.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, one of the things I was thinking about, I switched gears a little bit. You mentioned how, obviously, you've interviewed a lot of people.
Yes.
Tell us about some of the best interviews you've been able to do and have, and then what are some tips for getting good interviews out of people and getting good results out of people when you interview them? We do a lot of interviews because that's the form of telling the stories that we pull out for all of the companies we deal with and organizations. But just as a thing, what are some of them that you've done, and then what are some of the tips for pulling those nuggets out?
I would say one person I thought was probably my all-time favorite person to interview, Charles Bolden,
Oh, yeah.
who is from this area.
Yep.
And to be an astronaut and be a person who is so out of this world, he was the most down-to-earth person.
Humble.
Humble,
Yeah.
kind, gracious. Ben Carson, who was in town, and I interviewed him. And here is this man who is, was the first person to successfully separate Siamese twins from the brain, from the head. And he is just a kind, humble person.
Like saved babies' lives.
Yes,
That's something I've not accomplished at this point.
Right.
I fed mine.
And yes,
that's all I got.
Good luck with that even.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And so here are these amazing men, but they're humble. And I think that what I've tried to do all the years of interviewing people is to cut through. Like, those men were easy to interview, and I thoroughly enjoyed talking to them. Mm-hmm. But what I've tried to do, and this would be the biggest piece of advice, and I think you guys do it well, but I just always looked at people as, okay, I know you're running for president. Okay, I know you're this, and this, and you have all these titles. But you also go home and you got to figure out what's for dinner. Mm-hmm. You also have problems with your kids. You also have dreams and ambitions. You also enjoy sitting on the back porch and watching the birds and seeing the sunrise. You're still a person. And that's always been my biggest piece of advice when I would try to mentor young news anchors or reporters. You're so focused on the questions and what getting that microphone in front of someone. Put it down for a second and think, is this person having a bad day? Did this person walk in here and seem disheveled because his or her car didn't start and they had to walk the last mile there? I'm making that part up, but it's like, these are real people.
Context clues.
Yes. Yeah. And real life, events happening and with feelings. And that was the thing with, I never liked it if I knew I was interviewing someone and I'm thinking, okay, you're just flat out lying to me, but sure. I also had a part of me that thought, but right now I feel sorry for you because you feel like you've got to lie to me. Mm-hmm. And my biggest piece of advice is having empathy and viewing that person not as what material are you going to get out of him or her, but who is that person, and creating an environment where they feel like they can pour out their life. What was it about the Barbara Walters interviews? Is she really that good of a journalist? Is she really that, her speaking voice alone?
Yeah.
No, but somehow she created this environment where she could just ask any question, and would get an answer.
She'd draw it out of you. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and I think a genuine curiosity helps, right?
Very much so. You've got to truly want to know.
Right.
Yes. And to listen. If I sat here and said something about, I've signed up for the, Army Reserves or the South Carolina State Guard, and I leave next week. And then you say, so what is it you like about kale in your salad?
Sure.
And it's like, wait, were you listening? And so I think, and that's another thing I tried to teach young people is you've got to ask your question, but then listen to the answer, because you may want to throw away all your other questions and go, wait, let's talk about that.
Let's dig into that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't know you acted, as an example.
Right. Well, poorly, but yes.
Well, whatever. Yeah.
Just starting, but yes.
That's not a requirement to do it well.
Right.
But I think also, if you're interviewing that person that's going into the Guard, what people are watching don't really need to know is how many troops do we have, or
That's right.
Like statistics and details like that
right.
aren't as important as connecting to why.
Right.
And that's so much of what we try to do is just to say
right.
why are we doing this?
Right.
What's important to the people out there?
And what are you feeling inside at that moment that it's just like when we would pick interviews out, sound bites out, I'd always, say, I don't need the numbers, the stats. Mm-hmm. I can add that in. I want to know what that person feels like.
Yeah.
Hey, I just had to get my hair cut, shaved last night, and I packed my bag and I realized I'm going to have to kiss my wife goodbye and my children goodbye and our dogs goodbye, and then he goes off to, war or something. So listening and truly empathizing and thinking about this is a real person with real feelings.
And I think that's the difficult part about news too, because when we interview people, we're hired to interview them in a way to say, let's figure out how to get the best out of them. News, I think you want to make sure to tell those things, right? What is happening, right? Mm-hmm. If it's the Heart Walk, we want to talk about when it is, how you register, what's the website address, all that stuff, because that's your chance to do that.
Right.
But I think people connect to things so much more when it is a personal experience, when it is a sort of a because. We're doing it because.
Right.
And I think that makes a big difference.
Right. When you create a feeling, mm-hmm. Yes, it's just like commercials. Why do we buy certain products? Because the product itself, or because it's a feeling?
Yeah. Well, and so much of what we try to do is to kind of avoid all of that statistical stuff, to say, what we do is not important until we figure out why we're here and what our result is, what the effect is,
yes.
And that's super important.
Yes.
That's why we do so much work with nonprofits, because they have that story kind of built into their mission,
That's right.
Why we're here is important,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if you're Lowe's Foods selling a bottle of water, this bottle of water is not any different than your LeBlue, bottle of water.
Right.
This is the bigger bottle.
Right.
But it's, other than that.
Have you had LeBlue?
See, here's the thing. I can tell you for sure, this is my middle class mindset. I'm drinking the cheapest bottle of water I can find.
Well,
right?
Let me have full disclosure here. This water in here came out of my bathroom faucet this morning. So I was in a meeting last night at the hospital.
Right.
And they passed out these. And then I went into the bathroom last night to get ready for bed, and I'm drinking the last of it, and I set the bottle down on the counter. And then as I was rushing out to come here this morning, right. I'm like, I need some water. Yeah. And I just turn on the bathroom faucet.
Put it right in there.
So this is right from my well in Blythewood. Yeah.
Well, boy, you want to talk about a difference in culture. And you guys know this.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in high school and college, you never would have had water intentionally.
No,
like nobody would have ever carried around a giant
right.
Stanley Cup full of water all the time. My neighbors are
Mm-hmm.
millennials, God bless them, late 30s. They will never be anywhere. Their children will never be anywhere without their bottle of water.
That's exactly right.
And hydration is important, but hydration was not important 20 years ago or 30 years ago.
No.
I have no idea why it's become like constant. That we have to be drinking water constantly.
Yes. Yeah. In school, it's like you might, in the middle of the day, go down to the drinking fountain.
Yeah.
And like, okay, kids, get a sip of water from the drinking fountain.
A reason to get out of class. Can I go get a drink of water?
Right.
But it was never a thing where you're drinking water all day.
Right.
Like all day, all the time.
Right.
And I think scientifically we understand that we don't have to have water that much, right? Mm-hmm. It's not, nobody's really that dehydrated.
So you bring up a point. I was thinking along those lines. 2 nights ago, it was too dark for me to go out and do my run outside, which I always prefer outside running to a treadmill. So I go to my gym, Anytime Fitness in Blythewood, and I get on the treadmill, and I'm, looking ahead. Now, most of that is for balance, because if I'm looking down or looking around, I feel like this on the treadmill. So I'm just looking ahead, but I'm watching the guy to my right because he's walking on the treadmill. And he's got his phone like this, and the whole time.
It's scrolling.
And I'm on the treadmill for 45 minutes. The entire time, the guy's like this. And I really wanted to go like, hey, buddy, give it a rest. But, years ago, we never would have had our heads buried into a device.
While we're doing something else. Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Like, just enjoy your run. Now, I have been there before, and a lot of that was while I was in news, because I felt like I had to read everything. I had to know everything.
Yeah.
But I really have kind of gotten to this other side now where I'm thinking, you know what? Like my husband sometimes will say, I don't even know where my phone is right now.
Right.
Now that wigs me out a little bit, because I'm like, well, what if one of the kids is trying to, contact
like we don't have house phones anymore.
Is there something wrong with you?
Right.
Yeah. Well, I was telling my daughter's 15. I was telling her that when I tried to call my friend when I was 15, I would call their house and talk to their parents.
Yes.
Because their parents would always answer the phone, and I would say, is my friend there, and they would say, "How are you doing? How's your day today?" And I'd have to talk to this adult, and she is not okay talking to adults. Like, and my son is 21. He's got his own business, and he will still call me when he has to talk to an adult about a contract.
Yes,
he'll be like,
"That's right."
21, so he's an adult, but he'd be like, "Dad, I got this guy that called me, and he wants a price on this, and what should I do?" And I was like, "Well, call him, ask him what he wants, talk to him, just call him. It's fine."
But because everything was,
call me.
Right.
He texted me.
That's
but
that's right. Yeah, right.
Was it you?
Yeah, it was.
They just
Well, it was one of them. Yeah.
Or they do it through social media platforms. And
Yeah.
have you gone? I'm sure you've seen this. You go to a restaurant, and Craig and I were eating somewhere in the Vista, and I looked over at a table of there were 5 young girls. I say young, like in their young 20s, and guess what? Each one is doing.
Yeah.
Like this. And I'm like, wait, you 5 are out to dinner together.
Right.
But each of you is on her phone.
Right.
You're not communicating.
Well, and there's an element of that is, and my daughter and I talk about AI all the time because she is vehemently against AI. Like this is the hill she's going to die on.
Wow. At such a young age.
Yeah. She's like, it's ruining everything. Right. So this is what she thinks about AI. And we talk about this as the idea that, okay, we can sit around and say the phone is the death of conversation, but it's something that's happening. And we've got to decide, like, okay, how do we fight this? Right. Do we fight it by saying no phones in my house? Do we fight it by saying, nobody gets a phone? Or, is there some way to inspire people to have these conversations where, and granted, when me and my friends get together at dinner or whatever it is, we talk, because we're in our 50s and that's what we do. But we talk, but there's one or two of us that's always looking something up while the others are talking.
But see, I call that balance.
Right.
Because you're conversing, you're looking up.
Right.
But then it's also like, hey, here's this great resource.
Sure.
My husband and I might watch a movie or a documentary, and I'll sit there with my phone.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking up to see, okay, wait, I don't remember that being the queen during King so-and-so's reign. And, and I'm looking, for information.
Or how old is that actor?
Yes.
I watched something with John Voight in it the other day.
And you're looking up, right.
How old is John Voight? Is he 80 or is he like 69? And I can't tell. Right. And so he's 75.
But you're using it to supplement.
Right.
But there's that balance.
Yeah.
And that's the difference, I think.
I will tell you too, at my age, if I'm not playing a game while TV's going on, I'm asleep. Like I cannot stay awake
just to watch TV.
Just to watch TV. I can't let it happen. One of my New Year's resolutions 2 years ago was to be a one screen person. So I was never going to watch TV and then have the phone on at the same time. I can't stay awake. And so this is what my wife does is we sit down to watch a TV show. She's out within minutes, right? And it's because she's not playing a game or doing something else, and I'm distracted, and that's ADHD probably. But also, I just fall asleep if I don't have it. So
what time is bedtime in your household for you guys?
So my daughter's bedtime is still like 9:30. Generally, she goes to bed and she'll do some stuff before she goes to sleep. But so adult time is 9:30 to midnight-ish. My wife usually goes
9:30 to
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say like 9:30 to 10.
No. Adult time is 9:30 to midnight-ish, but my wife typically goes to sleep almost clockwork by like 9:37. And so it's usually just me watching series or something.
Right. And then what time's the alarm go off in the morning?
6.
And you guys? Well, you've got babies.
It's crazy right now. However, the general time frame is the older boys go to bed at 8:30. We're like, all right, time to get going up to bed.
Right.
Because that's like a half-hour process of them fighting with each other, and telling them 4 times, get your teeth brushed and get dressed and get in your bed. And so it's, after 9 by the time they're down.
Right.
Depending on the schedule, pre-baby, Elaine she's asleep by 9:30. Not like in bed. She typically falls asleep on the couch.
Right.
And then I, go back to do more work. And then I'll stay up until midnight, and then we're up at 5:30, 6 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's funny, as I get older, I prefer to go to bed earlier, get up earlier.
Yeah.
I feel like I get
prefer
a
to do
jump
that
on the
too.
day.
I just can't
Yes.
actually do it.
Yeah.
I have a hard time putting the brain down, you know.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
you know, it's I'd love to go to bed at 9:30 and get up at 6 refreshed. You know, after 8 or 9 or 10 hours of sleep, I'd love to be able to do that.
Right.
But
Right.
I can't seem to make
One
myself
of my
do
New
it.
Year's resolutions this year, and we've been very consistent with it, and something that is a new thing that we're gonna stick with is I used to get the boys up kind of like as late as possible so they could still have enough time to do what they needed to do in order to get out of the house. Mm-hmm. But I've decided, okay, for 2025, we're going to get up at 6 o'clock. I'm going to get them out of bed at 6 o'clock so they can come down first, have breakfast. We're going to do a devotional with them.
Yep.
And then they're going to go get their teeth brushed and get dressed and do all that stuff while I'm making lunch.
Yes.
And
how's it going?
Great. We haven't missed a day.
Awesome.
So the 5 days of the week when they're in school, that's our new morning routine.
Love it.
We actually got a text like 2 weeks in from Hollis's teacher, and she was just like, Hollis is doing so great. He's so attentive.
Nice.
Like just the switch of getting this. He loves getting to school early.
Yes. It makes a huge difference.
There's a window of like, okay, it takes 15 to 20 minutes, depending on traffic, to get to school. So we need to leave between 7:30 and 7:45. Well, it's always closer to 7:45. So then he's like the last one in class.
Yes.
And rushed a little bit.
And rushed. And so
and it affects you. Yeah.
Now it's 7:30. You guys got to be in the car. We got to be pulling out of the driveway at 7:30. Gives you plenty of time. They're there early.
Yay for you. Yay for you. You know, and I'll tell you why. My husband years ago broke me of a very bad habit I had.
The snooze.
I was just always late. Because it's not that I wasn't ready necessarily. It's that I would find all these other things to do. It's as though time just stopped.
Yep. And you get in the car and you go, what happened to that
and I'm
12
like, wait,
minutes that I had?
Right. I was on time and now, oh wait, I've got to do this and I need to call that. Oh, in fact, I need to send that text and then before you know it, you're running late. So he said to me, and this was a little hurtful, but true. He said, basically what you're doing when you show up late is you're telling somebody you're not important. I'm more important than you are.
Yep.
And I thought, well, I would never want them to think that. And so he said, change everything around. Get there. And then, like, I got here early because we had changed the time of when to be here. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm still here at the time I was supposed to be here. I'm going to sit out in the car and knock out those things that years before I would have knocked out at home.
Sure.
And so I'm sitting out there like, okay, I've check. And what happens, though, is I arrive calm, cool, and collected as opposed to always being frantic. And I can see why it affects your son in school. And so we also, Craig, we implemented this. I love to vacuum my house before we travel. And right now in our lives, we are traveling a ton. So I would love my house to be clean when I leave. I want it to come home to it clean. Yep. And if anyone is to break in while I'm gone, when the police come,
messy it up.
Yeah. It'll be clean.
Yeah. It crumbs all over the floor. You're
right.
like, what? Somebody broke in here while I was gone.
Right.
That's right.
Look, there's a piece of paper.
It's a Goldilocks
out of place.
situation. Like somebody's sleeping in my bed.
That's right. Yeah. So Craig said, because he does not like rushing to the airport and he likes to always be early to the airport. And you don't know if traffic, what could happen. So he said, if you will get ready first, completely be ready to walk out the door. And then if you have time,
do the other things.
Then I can vacuum. And it's worked for us because it encourages me. Okay, I want to vacuum because otherwise before it was like that clock's not, because I'm vacuuming, the clock is not moving. I know it's not. Time is standing still. And so, yes, it does make a difference. And I love that. I'm going to spin the topic wheel here.
Yeah, of course.
So I want to know your vision for As Told by Podcast. And the reason I'm asking is I'm doing a podcast. My pastor, I go to Shandon Baptist Church, and we have this dynamic young, I say he's young, he's 33, 34 years old, Daniel Dickard. And he wanted to start a podcast a year ago. And
Right.
so every Monday we release a new episode, and we've been doing topics. We did a prayer topic for like weeks and weeks, and then we did scripture, Bible knowledge, all that. So now we just are starting a new series called Great Questions. And, like deep questions like, is heaven real and who goes there?
Sure.
Can you really trust the Bible and all this stuff? So we know we have, like when I post it on all my social media platforms, I might get people like, try to think of some catchy something to make them go, oh, I want to hear what they say about that.
Yeah, of course.
I have been so fascinated by the podcast you guys are doing, As Told By, because you're interviewing people whom I know or they're in my community.
Yeah.
And I do get knowledge. I have enjoyed listening to your podcast. Where do you guys see this going?
Well, it's
because you realize I'm interviewing you,
Yeah,
right?
no, of course. Yeah.
Well, spin that
I'll
around.
let Brian answer. So.
This has been a journey for us too, because we're in our 4th season. We just made this 4th season, right?
How many episodes?
We took
is
a
that?
couple of breaks,
Yes. How
We've
many
done
episodes?
probably close to 50 episodes total.
Okay. Yes.
Over the
what
3 years
typically-
or 4 years we've been
Yes.
doing it. Yeah.
What typically has happened is we get a period of time during the year where we're not super busy.
Yes.
So we'll load up podcast guests,
Right.
and then we get busy again. So we go with these gaps.
Sure.
Now, this started in 2020, sitting around a table with lav mics on
in a very small
in a-
office.
So
Squeezed in with cameras inside this little room.
Bill and I would meet with potential clients, and what we want to do is kind of drill down on what they do so we can help them with their strategy before we just go and make content for them.
Right.
So we had talked about, it was like, this could be a podcast, this interviewing of clients. But then it turned into like a kind of a one note thing. Everything was kind of similar.
Right.
We couldn't necessarily draw those nuggets out of them because it was
Right.
very, this is my business kind of stuff. And then we looked at it and said, okay, let's just maybe try to offer marketing advice. Like, let's just bring guests in and start talking about marketing and
how they're marketing.
how
and what
they're marketing,
doing. Yeah.
what works, what doesn't.
Yeah.
And then we realized, for us, that wasn't all that interesting. So,
Even for us, yeah.
Well, because the thing is, nobody wants you to come on and just give your sales pitch for 35 minutes, right? That's
Right.
not super interesting. So,
Right. Right.
so as we've continued to evolve it, even with better mics and better camera setups and all that, it has become more of we call it the As Told By You podcast, because we want to give you a platform to tell your story.
Yes.
Whether it's a solopreneur, as you are kind of now,
Right.
or a business owner, or someone who's a salesperson. Everyone has their own story to tell. We want to just pull it out of you,
Right.
and at
and
that facility.
and give you that platform to do it. And it's benefits for you, it benefits for us, because ultimately it's content.
It is. What I'm curious about, though, is where you guys see it going, because, when we started the podcast, we've done 42, 44 episodes now. When we started it, originally it was tailored because Shannon Baptist Church is a large church.
Right.
So we'll do this more for the people in the church that, okay, they hear what Daniel says on Sunday, they're in a, study on Wednesday night or whatever.
Well, let's dive into it.
Let's dive into it a little bit more. But then I'm like, no, because I'm putting it on all my platforms, which means my viewers or followers
out there.
can get something out of it too. But now, Bill, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. Everyone has a podcast.
Sure.
I mean, everyone has a podcast.
Well, our intention is real simple. What we recognize is that our community has some very cool people in it that do some really interesting stuff, right?
Yes.
Josh Furlow, that we had on in the fall, has a production company that works with Netflix and Amazon Prime to make the TV series that you've all recognize and know. And he lives in Columbia because his wife wanted to live here and has family here and all this kind of stuff. And that's the kind of thing I'm really fascinated with. Brad Shank, who is the team president for the Fireflies, could do this anywhere in the country and has done it in several markets. And loves doing it in Columbia. He's passionate about the Fireflies, and I think
has done a great job building the franchise.
Great job, and that was a big part of our conversation. Was just like, what's that journey been like? Going from not so popular to more popular, and everything's going well, and everything's kind of building. The way we see this happening is once we run out of guests, we'll just start pulling in another guest, right? Or the same guest on a second time, right? Or how you doing now? Catching back up and that kind of stuff. What we want to do right now is we want to connect with our community, with the Columbia area, right? And I'm not really concerned about somebody from, Michigan or Pennsylvania watching this podcast. I want people that are here that are going to resonate with the Fireflies. They're going to resonate with Dawndy Mercer-Plank from WIS. We had Cyrus Frakes on earlier this week. Love Cyrus. That was so fun talking to him about pageants. And I am so far separated from the pageant world. It's like I'm here in my khakis and my sweater, and
But it's like you're able to get this behind the scenes look without being behind the scenes.
Well, and those sort of environments that we wouldn't find ourselves in, right? And we had a great conversation with Cyrus, and would not have had that conversation outside of this. And I think that that's a big thing for us. We enjoy doing it, but also, every time I run into somebody else in Columbia, they say, "Love your podcast. I love what y'all are doing." Even if they haven't seen it, they're happy that we're doing it.
Yes.
And so that's been a lot of fun.
There's really we have multiple motivations.
Yeah.
Right. Everything that Bill said is exactly right. We want to connect to our community. We want to meet more people, expand our network. But at the same time, we are a marketing agency.
Right.
We need to create content.
Right.
This is a low-hanging fruit way to do it. And that's why everyone has a podcast, because it is. You can sit down, you can have a conversation, you can chop it up, and now you have content for a week.
That's right.
So there's a motivation in that. There's a motivation in, we have a beautiful studio here, and we want people to see it.
Yes.
And the more people that come in and see it and use it, will likely come back.
Right.
Because you can come and use our studio whenever
you
you
can rent it for yourself.
Pillows.
We had a meeting in here yesterday. We had 30 people in here for a meeting. It was amazing.
Wow.
So those are the levels that we're working on. So we would love to have this, and I say that, but we would love to have it take off and have sponsors and have thousands of viewers on YouTube.
Brought to you by
Le Bleu. That's right.
Le Bleu.
But realistically, our motivation is expanding our network, introducing our community to what we do.
Yes.
And use it to fuel our business as well as other people's business.
Well, you're doing a great job with it. Now, our podcast, which is called Shannon Plus Podcast, just meaning a little plus to what you get on Sunday, we're just doing audio.
Oh, okay.
I would like us to take it to the next level.
And you have the capacity, surely, at Shannon, to do that.
Yes.
And I would say, the challenge that y'all have is, obviously, now your pastor's coming up with sermons for every Sunday, right? So if you're doing it weekly, then that gives you fuel for the podcast. Let's talk about what we talked about Sunday, and let's just develop it.
Right.
We don't have to do that. We can invite a new person on. Like say, who are you, and tell me what you do, and then we just go from there, right? And I've got a framework. I mean, I sent you questions, ahead of time. I've got a framework for how to get that story going. And this is how we kind of view interviewing in general as our framework for the questions that we ask people. But you've got a challenge of keeping it interesting and making sure that the congregation, if you've got, and I don't remember, Shannon, last time I talked to somebody, it was 4,000 or so members. If you got 4,000 or so members in that church, then you've got a perfect audience, right? They're right there.
Right.
You're not going to send them something from you and the pastor, and they're going to go, nah.
Right.
You know, so you're not trying to reach my mom, who's an Episcopal and probably wouldn't listen to a podcast anyway. You're trying to reach the people who are already in the audience, and that's so much part of the equation, is just figuring that out. And
why not video? Video is such a powerful medium,
especially for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
That if you're going to sit down and take the time to do the podcast, why not video it?
Right.
You have the audio track to upload to all the audio podcasting places, and you have the video track to use for YouTube, to use for...
You got a great media crew at Shandon.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'd be happy to do it.
We do.
You know?
I'll talk to
and if they're not,
there. You know, I mean, the one nice part doing audio is you can have a face for radio, and I can just not worry about it.
You show up in hoodies and sweatpants and do it. Yeah.
The real Dawndy Mercer-Plank.
Yeah, right. Hair and ponytail.
And hey, look, that might be a good video podcast thing too.
Right,
you know, like what are we going to do this week? Right. How dressed down are we going to be for this podcast?
Right.
And look, I'm only a little dressed up today because I was going to the United Way breakfast. You know, I probably would have been in a t-shirt or a hoodie if it hadn't been for that. But well, Dawndy, this has been so good. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
We always end up with 5 questions.
Okay.
5 favorites.
We're gonna ask you your favorites, and you just tell us whatever comes to mind.
Okay.
So first one is so this is a special Dawndy Mercer-Plank question. Who is your favorite news anchor throughout history?
Bill Hemmer, and he's more of a because he's still on air.
He's very good.
Okay.
I've just. You know what I love about Bill Hemmer? It doesn't matter who, if he's Fox News, doesn't matter who his co-anchor is, because he's had numerous co-anchors. And before Fox, he was with CNN.
Yeah. I
have always found him to be an encourager and to not, like, push his, I want the airtime. I want to get the last word in.
Yeah.
And it's like he may be the one who's had the show all the time and somebody new comes in. And if she takes the last word, he's not, I've just always respected him. Never met him, but I respect him.
Seems like he doesn't have a big ego.
Yes. Yeah. I appreciate that about him.
Wow. I am so separated from TV news because I have no idea.
Who Bill Hemmer is. Yeah. He's been around for a while, but that's okay.
I said,
but you
and
knew.
Fox News.
Yes,
You knew. That's fine.
Right.
That's all that's on in our house.
That's enough.
No,
that's enough.
He's my guy. Yeah.
All right. Favorite TV show?
I would say, well, there's a new comedy, St. Dennis something. It's like a hospital scene. It's kind of it's like the, who was the one, Michael Scott? Like The Office, but in a hospital scene. I've kind of enjoyed the humor on
because
that.
that's the same
like
people.
A new Scrubs almost.
Yeah.
Yes. I'd say that, Frasier, when Frasier was on, I loved just the higher level of intelligence, with the humor. But honestly, the show that I'm like, it's 7:30, Jeopardy.
Right.
So my husband and I love Jeopardy.
Okay.
And we, try to have it on while we're getting dinner together.
Nice. Okay. Awesome. Favorite song?
Couldn't even. What day of the week is it?
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Sure.
What's the song that you put on when you're running?
I put on Apple Music and just put in like fitness or, Christian
just
rock.
high energy.
Yeah. I wish I could tell you I have that's my favorite song of all time.
Right.
No.
Gotcha.
Next question. Yeah.
So
I love, like one moment I want to listen to The Four Seasons by Vivaldi, or I like Rachmaninoff's Second Concerto, on the theme of Paganini. Mm-hmm. But then I also am a huge Rush fan.
Okay.
And want to listen to Tom Sawyer.
Very similar.
So
pull a lot from Paganini for Rush. So I'm with you.
It's, occasionally I'll put a little country music in there.
Yeah.
And then, love Christian rock and Christian praise and opera. I tried opera a little bit, and I can have an appreciation for it. Not gonna just turn it on in the house.
It's an acquired taste.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Next question.
You have to love. You have to
Yes.
love it. One that originated with Christian. What would be your last meal on death row?
I heard you ask him that.
And I thought Thanksgiving was a wild response. I did not expect him to say that.
Because, when he said that, I thought, because I do love mashed potatoes and green bean casserole.
Comforting, right?
And sweet potatoes, but see, I'm not a meat eater. So
right.
I can't say, a big juicy steak or,
sure.
something like that.
Yep.
I'd say I can tell you that it would be a hot meal. I just always, there's something to me about dinner. I just don't want like a cold sandwich or a cold salad. I want it to be heated up. Like last night I sauteed a bunch of mushrooms and broccoli and took potatoes and cut them and stuck them in, the Breville and created like chips with them, and then did a big kale salad and put the hot over that. So I could just say it'd be a hot
vegetable soup.
Well, you don't have to worry about health.
Veggie soup.
You don't have to worry about health anymore.
Yeah,
well, that's true. Maybe I will take that hamburger.
Yeah,
now.
that's right. Like a big ice cream sundae could be your last meal, because who cares at that point?
Right.
So.
I just, on that morbid thought.
That's why it's an interesting question, because
there's
no more future.
That's
right.
I'd still be like, well, I want to eat well.
So as you become an actor, favorite movie?
Okay, don't laugh. And again, I can't say, that is always going to be my favorite movie of all time. But I will say, I love musicals. And I love, like, Hello, Dolly with Barbra Streisand.
Oh, yeah.
Can sing every song in it. Walter Matthau in there. I love the dancing in it. So if I had to pick a favorite movie, I think it would be
Hello, Dolly.
Hello, Dolly.
Nice. That's a good one. That's a really good one. And that's Streisand at the top of her power too. I mean,
yes, totally.
She had a string of hits right there that just that's amazing. Did I get 5 or was that 4?
That was 5.
That was 5?
Added the newscast.
Oh, the newscast. That's right. Okay, awesome. Well, Dawndy, thank you so much for doing this. This has been great.
For having me.
I know we talked in I guess it was November or whatever it was. So I'm glad we finally got it together and all that. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Good luck on As Told By. And I look forward to seeing your podcast grow, because I really enjoy it.
Well, that's exciting. I
love what you've done with the place.
Yeah, right? Not bad. Not bad. You should have seen it when we moved in.
It
did not look like this. So, well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Brian.